Ed Warren was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, in 1926. His childhood was not entirely ordinary. From a young age, he believed his family home was haunted. He would often hear strange noises and see doors open and close on their own. These experiences were not frightening to him. Instead, they sparked a deep curiosity about the unseen world. He wanted to understand what was happening. This early exposure to the paranormal shaped his entire life. He spent countless hours in the library, reading everything he could find about ghosts, spirits, and demons. His father, a police officer, taught him to be methodical and observant, skills that would later prove invaluable in his unusual career. Lorraine Moran was also born in Bridgeport, just a year after Ed, in 1927. Her experiences with the supernatural began at a young age as well, but they were very different from Ed's. Lorraine attended a private Catholic girls' school, where she began to notice she could see auras, or fields of light, around people. She didn't understand what it was at first. She thought everyone could see them. When she mentioned this to one of the nuns at her school, she was told not to speak of such things. This made her feel isolated, and she learned to keep her abilities to herself. Her gift was a form of clairvoyance, an ability to perceive things beyond the normal senses, a talent that would later become the cornerstone of her life's work. The world of the 1930s and 40s was not as open to discussions of the paranormal as it is today. People who had strange experiences often kept them secret for fear of being ridiculed or misunderstood. Ed's interest was seen as a peculiar hobby, while Lorraine's abilities were something to be hidden, yet their separate paths were slowly leading them toward a shared destiny. Ed continued his self-directed education in demonology, the study of demons and evil spirits, while Lorraine quietly struggled to understand her psychic gifts. They were two young people living in the same town, each with a unique connection to a world that most people either denied or feared, unaware that their lives were about to intersect. Their early lives set the stage for what was to come. Ed's encounters made him a seeker of knowledge, determined to find proof and understanding. He was driven by a need to confront the darkness he first witnessed as a boy. Lorraine's psychic sensitivity gave her a direct line to the spiritual realm, a gift that was both a burden and a blessing. She felt the emotions of spirits and saw things others could not. These formative years were crucial. They forged the foundations of their future roles, Ed as the investigator and demonologist, and Lorraine as the sensitive medium who could communicate with the other side. Their individual journeys were the prelude to a partnership that would change the world of paranormal investigation forever. Ed and Lorraine met when they were just teenagers. Ed worked as an usher at a local movie theater in Bridgeport. Lorraine and her mother were regular patrons. Ed was immediately drawn to Lorraine. He found reasons to talk to her, and they quickly became friends. Their connection was instant and powerful. They discovered they shared many interests, though they did not speak about the paranormal right away. Ed was charming and confident, and Lorraine was kind and gentle. It was a classic story of young love, but with an unusual undercurrent that neither of them fully understood at the time. Their bond was forming, laying the groundwork for a lifetime of shared purpose. Their relationship deepened as they spent more time together. One evening, Ed finally opened up to Lorraine about his experiences with ghosts. He told her about the strange events in his childhood home and his fascination with haunted places. He was nervous, worried that she would think he was crazy. To his surprise, Lorraine did not laugh or dismiss him. Instead, she listened with empathy and understanding. It was then that she, in turn, began to cautiously share her own secret. She told him about the auras she could see and the feelings she would get in certain places. For the first time, they were both able to speak freely about the supernatural world they knew existed. Their shared secret brought them even closer. When Ed enlisted in the Navy during World War II, they stayed in contact. After his ship sank in the North Atlantic, he was given survivor's leave. During that time, he returned to Bridgeport and married Lorraine. She was just 17 years old. Their marriage marked the official beginning of their lifelong partnership. After the war, they decided to pursue their shared passion. Ed was a self-taught artist, and they began traveling the country. He would paint pictures of houses that were rumored to be haunted. This gave them a reason to knock on the door and ask for permission to investigate. This early method was clever and effective. Ed would set up his easel on the sidewalk and begin to paint. Soon, the homeowners would come out to see what he was doing. This opened the door for conversation. Ed and Lorraine would explain their interest in the paranormal and ask if the owners had ever experienced anything unusual. More often than not, people were relieved to share their stories with someone who would listen without judgment. This is how the Warrens began their career. They were not just ghost hunters, they were listeners and helpers, offering comfort and validation to people who were frightened and confused by events they could not explain. Ed Warren's role in their partnership was that of a demonologist. It is important to note that he was a self-taught demonologist, the only one recognized by the Catholic Church at the time who was not a priest. His knowledge came from years of dedicated study, reading ancient texts, and working alongside dozens of priests during exorcisms. Ed believed that the paranormal world was not just filled with lost human spirits. He was convinced that darker, more malevolent entities existed. He categorized these as inhuman spirits or demons. His job was to identify the presence of such entities and understand the threat they posed to the living. Lorraine Warren's abilities were the perfect complement to Ed's knowledge. She was a gifted clairvoyant and a light trance medium. This meant she could perceive information about a location or object through means other than the known human senses. When they entered a supposedly haunted location, Lorraine could often feel the emotional imprint left behind. She could sense the presence of spirits, both human and inhuman. She described it as seeing into another dimension that coexisted with our own. Her abilities allowed her to communicate with spirits, understand their stories, and discern their intentions. She was the one who could see the invisible, while Ed was the one who knew how to fight it. Together, they formed a formidable team. Their methods were unique. When they arrived at a new case, Ed would begin by interviewing the family and meticulously documenting their claims. He looked for patterns and evidence, much like a detective. Meanwhile, Lorraine would walk through the house, using her psychic senses to tune into the spiritual energy present. She could often identify the specific locations of paranormal activity and describe the spirits involved. Ed would then use this information to guide his investigation. He would set up audio recorders and cameras, hoping to capture physical evidence to support what Lorraine was sensing. Their differing skills created a system of checks and balances. Ed was the grounded, logical investigator, always seeking tangible proof. Lorraine was the intuitive, empathetic sensitive, providing insights that no machine could capture. Ed trusted Lorraine's abilities completely, but he always sought to back them up with hard evidence. This combination made their work compelling. They were not just relying on feelings or stories, they were attempting to build a case, piece by piece, using both psychic perception and scientific methods. This dual approach made them unique in the field of paranormal research and gave their findings a powerful sense of credibility for those who believed. The Warrens' work often extended beyond private homes and into the realm of official institutions. They frequently collaborated with police departments, medical professionals, and clergy. When a case involved phenomena that seemed to defy rational explanation, the Warrens were sometimes called in as consultants. Police officers, faced with bizarre and inexplicable events at a crime scene or in a witness's home, would occasionally reach out to them. These officers were not necessarily believers in the paranormal, but they were practical people looking for any possible explanation for the things they were encountering. The Warrens offered a different perspective, one that looked beyond the physical world for answers. Their relationship with the Catholic Church was particularly significant. Ed's devout faith and extensive knowledge of demonology earned him the respect of many priests. While the Church has its own official process for investigating demonic activity and performing exorcisms, the Warrens often became the first point of contact for families in distress. They would conduct the initial investigation to determine if the activity was genuinely supernatural or had a logical cause. If they concluded that a demonic entity was involved, they would then present their evidence to the Church. They worked with priests to prepare for and assist in the rite of exorcism, providing support and guidance based on their vast experience. These collaborations were not always smooth or officially sanctioned. Many within established institutions remained skeptical of their methods. Some police officers and doctors viewed their involvement as unscientific and potentially harmful, believing it could encourage delusion in vulnerable people. Similarly, not all members of the clergy were open to working with a lay demonologist and a clairvoyant. The Warrens had to navigate a complex landscape of belief and skepticism. They built their reputation case by case, earning trust through their professionalism, their calm demeanor, and their genuine desire to help people who were in desperate need. Despite the challenges, these partnerships were crucial to their work. They lent an air of legitimacy to their investigations. When a police department or a priest acknowledged the possibility of a paranormal explanation, it validated the experiences of the families involved. It showed that the Warrens were not just fringe figures, but serious researchers respected by people in positions of authority. This network of contacts also provided them with resources and information they would not have had otherwise. Their ability to bridge the gap between the paranormal world and the official world was one of the keys to their long and impactful career. Perhaps no case is more famously associated with the Warrens than the Amityville Horror. In 1975, they were called to investigate a house in Amityville, New York, where the Lutz family claimed to be terrorized by demonic forces. The family had moved into the house just a year after a brutal mass murder had occurred there. They reported terrifying events, including swarms of flies, strange odors, cold spots, and physical attacks by an unseen entity. The Warrens, along with a television crew, conducted a seance in the house. Lorraine reported feeling a deeply malevolent presence and was horrified by the events she psychically witnessed. The case became a cultural phenomenon, spawning books and movies, but it also brought intense scrutiny and accusations of a hoax. Another of their most famous investigations centered on a possessed Raggedy Ann doll named Annabelle. The story began in 1970 when a nursing student received the doll as a gift. Soon after, she and her roommate began to notice strange things happening. The doll would move on its own, appearing in different rooms of their apartment. They found handwritten notes with messages like, "Help us." Initially, a medium told them the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a young girl named Annabelle Higgins. However, when the activity escalated and became violent, the Warrens were called in. Ed and Lorraine concluded that the doll was not possessed, but was being manipulated by an inhuman spirit to trick the young women. They took the doll and encased it in a specially blessed glass box in their museum. The haunting of the Perron family in Harrisville, Rhode Island, is another landmark case for the Warrens, later depicted in the film The Conjuring. The Perron family, with their 5 daughters, moved into an old farmhouse in 1971, and immediately began experiencing paranormal activity. The haunting started with minor incidents but grew progressively more sinister. The spirits in the house were numerous, some seemingly harmless, and others deeply malevolent. The most dangerous entity was identified by the Warrens as a witch named Bathsheba Sherman, who had cursed the land centuries earlier. Lorraine conducted a seance to contact the spirits, but it reportedly went terribly wrong, resulting in one of the most terrifying nights of the family's life. These 3 cases, Amityville, Annabelle, and the Perron family, form the trifecta of the Warrens' most well-known work. They are the stories that captured the public imagination and cemented their status as America's foremost paranormal investigators. Each case presented a different facet of their work. Amityville was a high-profile demonic infestation. Annabelle involved a haunted object used as a conduit for evil, and the Perron haunting was a long-term siege on a family by multiple spirits. These investigations were dramatic, terrifying, and highly controversial. They became modern folklore, endlessly debated by believers and skeptics alike, and served as the foundation for the Warrens' enduring legacy in paranormal circles and popular culture. Beyond their most famous cases, the Warrens investigated thousands of other claims of paranormal activity throughout their careers. Their work took them all over the world, from the United States and Canada to England and even Japan. They investigated the Smurl family haunting in Pennsylvania, which honestly bore striking similarities to the Amityville haunting. This case involved a family allegedly tormented by a demon for years. They also looked into the case of Bill Ramsey, an Englishman who, well, believed he was a werewolf, and actually exhibited superhuman strength and animalistic behavior. The Warrens arranged for an exorcism, which they claimed successfully cured him of his lycanthropic affliction. Another notable case was the Enfield poltergeist in England. While they were not the primary investigators, the Warrens did visit the Hodgson family and offered their expert opinion. They supported the claims that a poltergeist was tormenting the family, especially young Janet Hodgson. This case, much like Amityville, was highly publicized and deeply controversial, with some researchers believing it was an elaborate hoax perpetrated by the children. The Warrens' involvement helped to bring the case to international attention and really solidified their image as experts who were called upon to weigh in on significant paranormal events around the globe. To house the artifacts collected from their many investigations, the Warrens established a museum in the basement of their home in Monroe, Connecticut. It was called the Warrens Occult Museum. Now, this was not your typical museum filled with historical relics. Instead, it contained objects they believed were haunted, cursed, or had been used in occult rituals. Each item had a dark story behind it. The collection included the infamous Annabelle doll, a shadow doll that could supposedly appear in your dreams and stop your heart, and a mirror used for summoning spirits. It also held a coffin allegedly used by a modern-day vampire and various items from satanic rituals. The museum served as a physical testament to their life's work. Ed would often give tours, explaining the history of each object and the dangers associated with it. He believed these items were too dangerous to be left in circulation, where they could fall into the wrong hands and cause harm. The museum was blessed regularly by a priest to keep the evil contained within its walls. It became a legendary place, a destination for paranormal enthusiasts, and a chilling reminder of the dark forces the Warrens believed they battled every day. The collection of haunted objects was tangible proof, for their supporters, of the reality of the supernatural world they explored. Ed and Lorraine Warren were, a study in contrasts, yet their personalities were perfectly complementary. Ed was the unwavering anchor of the duo. He was a devout Catholic, and his faith was the bedrock of his work. He approached each case with a calm, almost stoic demeanor. He saw himself as a soldier in a spiritual war, a protector of families under siege by forces of darkness. His background as a police officer's son and a Navy veteran was really evident in his methodical approach. He was direct, no nonsense, and unafraid to confront what he believed to be pure evil. His deep voice and steady presence were reassuring to the terrified families they helped. Lorraine, on the other hand, was the sensitive soul of the operation. Her clairvoyant abilities made her profoundly empathetic. She didn't just investigate a haunting, she felt it. She could sense the pain of trapped spirits and the terror of the families involved. This empathy, honestly, came at a great personal cost. She often described their cases as emotionally and physically draining, leaving her feeling weak and vulnerable. Unlike Ed, who was eager to confront the darkness, Lorraine was cautious. She understood the dangers of the spirit world on a deep, personal level. She was the one who would often urge restraint, knowing that provoking a powerful entity could have terrible consequences. Their dynamic in the field was fascinating to observe. Ed would lead the charge, armed with holy water, crosses, and his unwavering conviction. He was the strategist, the demonologist who understood the enemy and how to fight it. He would challenge the spirits, demanding they reveal themselves, while Lorraine stood back, observing and interpreting the unseen. She was their spiritual barometer, sensing shifts in energy and warning Ed of impending danger. She could tell him where the entity was, what it felt like, and what its intentions might be. Her input was crucial, guiding Ed's actions and ensuring the safety of everyone present. This balance between Ed's assertive confidence and Lorraine's gentle caution was essential to their success and, honestly, their survival. Ed's faith gave him the courage to face the darkest of entities, while Lorraine's psychic sensitivity provided the roadmap through the invisible landscape of the haunting. He was the sword, and she was the shield. Together, they presented a united front that was both formidable and comforting. Families saw in Ed a strong protector and in Lorraine a compassionate confidant. It was this unique partnership of personalities and abilities that made them so effective and so beloved by those who sought their help. The work of Ed and Lorraine Warren has had a profound and lasting impact on popular culture, especially in the horror movie genre. Their case files have, honestly, become a goldmine for filmmakers. The story of the Lutz family became the basis for the 1979 film, The Amityville Horror, and its numerous sequels and remakes. This film terrified audiences and turned the unassuming Dutch colonial house into a symbol of evil, while the Warrens' involvement was a key part of the real-life story. The film focused more on the family's experience, cementing the haunting itself as a cornerstone of American folklore. More recently, the Warrens themselves have been brought to the forefront of their stories through the Conjuring universe. This highly successful film franchise, which began in 2013, stars actors Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine Warren. The films dramatize their most famous investigations, including the Perron family haunting, the Enfield poltergeist, and the case of Arna Cheyenne Johnson, who claimed demonic possession as a defense in a murder trial. These movies portray the Warrens as heroic figures, blending their real-life personas with the dramatic requirements of Hollywood storytelling. This cinematic treatment has introduced the Warrens to a new generation and has massively amplified their fame. However, it has also blurred the line between fact and fiction. The films take considerable creative liberties, heightening the drama and inventing scenes for cinematic effect. For example, the terrifying climax of The Conjuring, involving an exorcism at the Perron house, was a dramatic invention that did not happen in that way. This blending of real events with Hollywood sensationalism has made it difficult for the public to separate the Warrens' actual work from their on-screen depictions. The influence of the Warrens extends beyond direct adaptations of their cases. They helped to popularize the very idea of the modern paranormal investigation team. The image of a married couple, one a scientific-minded investigator and the other a psychic sensitive, has become a common trope in paranormal reality television and fiction. They established a template for ghost hunting that combines technical equipment with psychic insight. Their legacy is not just in the stories they told, but in the way they told them, creating a narrative of spiritual warfare that has proven to be endlessly fascinating to the public and a powerful force in shaping contemporary horror entertainment. The legacy of Ed and Lorraine Warren is, well, complex and deeply divided. To their supporters and the countless families they helped, they were nothing short of heroes. They were seen as pioneers in a field that, honestly, few took seriously. They devoted their lives to helping people who were experiencing terrifying and inexplicable events, often for free. Believers see them as courageous warriors who stepped into the darkness to fight for those in need. For these individuals, the Warrens provided validation, comfort, and a framework for understanding the supernatural. Their work gave a voice to the voiceless and offered hope in seemingly hopeless situations. On the other side of the debate are the skeptics and critics. Many paranormal researchers and scientists have questioned the Warrens' methods and motives. They point to a lack of verifiable empirical evidence for their extraordinary claims. Cases like the Amityville Horror have been heavily disputed, with many investigators concluding they were elaborate hoaxes. Critics argue that the Warrens were masterful storytellers who exaggerated or even fabricated details to build their brand and profit from books, lectures, and media appearances. They suggest that the Warrens exploited vulnerable families, reinforcing their fears instead of seeking rational explanations for their experiences. This debate over their credibility really highlights the central tension in their work, the intersection of faith, folklore, and fact. The Warrens operated in a realm where definitive proof is elusive. Their evidence was often anecdotal, based on personal testimony and Lorraine's psychic impressions. For believers, this was enough. For skeptics, it was nowhere near the standard of scientific proof. Ed and Lorraine themselves seemed untroubled by this debate. They were driven by their own conviction and the positive results they saw in the families they assisted. They believed they were doing God's work, and the opinions of skeptics were of little consequence to them. Ed Warren passed away in 2006, and Lorraine followed in 2019, but their legend continues to grow. Whether one views them as paranormal pioneers or charismatic mythmakers, their impact is undeniable. They brought the conversation about ghosts, demons, and spiritual warfare into the mainstream. They transformed the niche hobby of ghost hunting into a global cultural phenomenon. Through their cases, their museum, and especially their influence on Hollywood, Ed and Lorraine Warren have become modern cultural icons. Their stories tap into a deep human fascination with the unknown, ensuring that their legacy, controversial as it may be, will continue to haunt and inspire for generations to come.